The legend is widespread legend that is very common in the north of Europe, especially in Norway, Denmark and Sweden. There is a few legends in Finland, but that's usually in areas where Swedish influences have been strong. Same with a couple of similar legends in the northern Germany, where Danish influences have been present. The legend, however, has strong connection to other legends that comes from other parts of Europe, about saint legends from Ireland, and the legends with the devil as the master builder, and it usually exists to explain the origin of some strange feature of a building, why there is a huge rock outside the church, or to explain how some mythical beast was created. The base for the legend is usually the same. A giant, a troll, the devil, or some similar magical but evil being offers to build some kind of structure. He wants a high price if he's able to build it in time, and the person that wants the structure built agrees to the high price, since he is convinced that it is an impossible task and he will never actually have to pay. When he realizes the master builder actually will succeed with the task, he gets nervous, but in some way saved in the end, and the master builder either die or have to leave without pay. One of these legends with connection to the pre-Christian era can be found in Scandinavian literature in the legend of the giant and his stallion Svadelfare in Snorres Edda. It is a part of Gylfaginning and is called How Gylfe Was Deceived. Briefly, the story goes that a man comes to the Aesir and offers to build a wall around Midgard. The wall would be safe from trolls and giants alike. As a reward for this, he wants the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freya. Since Thor is out on one of his travels and isn't there to protect Midgard, the gods, on Loki's advice, agree to this. But they put in the additional that he will not be paid anything if he is not finished before the first day of summer, and he must not hire any other man to help him. The man agrees to this. However, the man has a large stallion, Svadelfare, which can drag a huge amount of stone every day. When it finally begins to approach the first day of summer, the wall is almost ready, and the gods become worried. They blame this on Loki because it was Loki that recommended them to take the deal, so now they claim he has to solve it too. Loki does so by transforming himself into a beautiful mare and thus luring away the stallion Svadelfare. Without his strong horse, the man does not have time to complete his work, and when he realizes this and that his salary will not be paid, he, quote, got into a giant rage, end quote, and thus it's revealed that he actually is a giant himself. The gods then feel no hesitation about breaking the word, and by then Thor has arrived back home. He pays the giant with a crushed skull instead. However, after his adventures with Svadelfare, Loki gives birth to a grey 8-legged foal a couple of months later. The foal is Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse, which is of course the best of all horses. In the Christian world, the same motif often appears in legends that tell how different churches were built. Perhaps the most famous and also the earliest examples in Scandinavia, except for the one in Snorres Edda, are the ones about St. Olaf and the troll Skalle from the Nidaros Cathedral in Trondheim, and the legend about the giant Finn and St. Laurentius from the cathedral in Lund, which has been dated to the 14th century. These two have clear similarities with the story of Svadelfare. They contain a magical being, a troll or a giant, who offers to build a church, and the saint agrees to this, as he does not believe that the giant will ever be able to cope with this, which turns out the giant is dangerously close to doing. Here, however, the tale has borrowed more motifs from a folk tale with Irish roots, namely the tale of Rumpelstiltskin. Instead of carrying out the construction in a certain time, the person ordering the construction must guess the builder's name before the construction is done. Otherwise, he has to pay. The reward in the legend from Lund's cathedral is the sun, moon, and the priest's eye, if the name is not guessed. In the case of Trondheim, the giant is to receive the sun, the moon, and the head of St. Olaf. However, the name is revealed at the last moment in both cases, because the saint happens to hear how the giant's family talk about the fact that the giant will soon take home the salary for his construction. The legend has been popular well into modern times, and there are many variations written down about several different churches, above all in Norway and Sweden. In the later versions, I've looked at one from Ångermanland and one from Halland. They have followed the two previous church building stories from Lund and Trondheim quite well, but what the giant will get as payment separates them, as well as the name of the giant. In the legend from Ångermanland, the giant should only get the sun and the moon. The giant's name is Ester. In the legend from Halland, the giant's name is Spille, and the payment is not at all the sun and the moon. It is only to take the priest home so he can eat him. In both versions, just as in the versions from Lund and Trondheim, and also similar to what is happening in Rumpelstiltskin, the priest by pure luck overhears the giant's family talking about the giant, and thus found out the name. Happy, he can run back and at the absolute latest moment reveal the giant's name. Both in the variation from Trondheim and Halland, it is when the last spire is to be set upon the church. Since the giant never finishes it because he hears his name, the story is told that no one can get it straight after that. In the case from Halland, it is a hole in the church wall, which, no matter how hard you try, it will never be filled. The giants doesn't always die in the end, sometimes they just run off. Very often, though, they share the giant's rage with the giant in the story of Gylfe and Svadelfare. They try to crush whatever they already built, but some force, usually God, kills them off or petrify them before they manage to destroy anything. In Lund, people point to a male figure holding one of the pillars and say that is Finn, the giant, who was petrified by God as punishment for trying to tear down the church in his anger when St. Laurentius managed to reveal his name. There are both similarities and differences from Gylfaginning in the story of Svadelfare. Except for the giant rage, as described by Snorri, the element of the sun and the moon as wages is found in most variants. A feature that the tale from Halland has borrowed from Rumpelstiltskin's story, but does not appear in Gylfaginning, is that the revelation of the name takes place in a rhyming form. This is a common thing in both the Swedish and Norwegian variants, where the names are created so they rhyme with a direction or similar. For example, in the legend from Ångermanland, where the giant is called Ester. The Swedish word for west is väster, so that rhymes with Esther. The saint in the story reveals the name when the last spire is supposed to be put on the church, and he say the rhyme Ester sätt spiran till väster, meaning Esther put the spire to the west. So is the story about the master builder from the Viking Age. How much have Snorre been influenced by the folk tale as he created the legend around Asgard, inspired by other contemporary master builder legends around Scandinavia? Of course, it is not something we can say with certainty. As I always have to say, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But I claim that Snorre didn't have to be the first origin of the spread of the saga in Scandinavia. Most likely, he wasn't, even if he might have corrected it to make it into a more literary version in his Edda. The origin of the saga can be found in two different stories earlier in the Celtic world, especially on Ireland. The payment, including the sun and the moon, is also very common as a formalized oath in the old Irish world. During the period from the 8th century until the time of Snorre in the 13th century, there was a lot of trading and traveling happening between Norway, Iceland and Ireland. Giants have existed under several different names in Old Norse mythology, and it is a kind of collective name for many different beings. They appear both in the heroic poetry, such as Thrimskvida or Hyndalud, and also in Snorres Edda, where we find numerous stories about Thor and his clashes with the giants, in both Gylfaginning and Skaldskaparmal, as well as in Völuspa, where we get to take part in the creation myth where the giants existed before the gods. It is thus possible to say, with a fairly high degree of certainty, that the concept of giant is, as a mysterious supernatural being with great powers, have existed quite strongly in the human world, both during Old Norse times and after we became Christians. It is not entirely inconceivable that the Irish tale was picked up by the Vikings who travelled there and then brought to Norway and incorporated into Old Norse mythology as an explanation for Odin's eight-legged horse Sleipnir. This is kind of how legend, myth and folktale works. They get influences from different places, and sometimes it is a job worth a master builder to try and sort out where all the different parts come from. Snorri may have picked up his saga, rewritten it in a more literary way, and then incorporated it into his Edda, and contemporary to this, the folktale might have lived on within the Christian folktales and created the stories around some of the very impressive churches. On this map we can see how many different versions of these legends that exist only in Sweden, and there are almost as many in Norway. So if you travel around in Sweden or Norway visiting an old medieval church, don't get surprised if you found a little note in the church that explains a strange hole, a crooked spire, or a mysterious stone formation as some form of the master builder legend. Legends, myth and folktales are fascinating like this. They start somewhere, get picked up, and change around slightly to get a local touch. And for some people, both historical and from the 2023, they will have a deep conviction and tell you that this is not just a story or a myth. This is how it really happened. Just as some people will, with the same conviction, claim that they have seen Jesus on a toast. If you want to read more about this and happen to be able to read Swedish, I have left some literature suggestions for you in the description. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.